I bet it's Ina May Gaskin.
Might be. And
Is the most famous midwife in the world. I know her as well.
okay.
And she's amazing. I could talk about her a little bit. She wrote a book called Spiritual Midwifery back in like the late 60s, early 70s, when her husband was sort of the spiritual leader of a hippie community that traveled from California across in school buses, and they finally bought land in Tennessee.
Well,
And they didn't want to go, and they didn't want to have their babies, hospitals to have their, and babies. They didn't have insurance. And so anyway, the midwives, they called themselves the farm after they bought land and settled down.
mm-hmm.
There's some amazing videos about them. But yeah, they led a movement, those midwives. But the main one who's been speaking out and writing books and everything is Ina May Gaskin. She's probably the most famous midwife in the world. She's from the States. Yeah, she was an English major in university, and she had a very traumatic first birth experience in the hospital. And it was back in the day when a lot of times they wouldn't let the husband or the father in the labor room with the mother. So some of the farm midwives that had to go to the hospital handcuffed themselves to their husbands so they could not be separated in labor. That thing, you know,
Yeah.
it's I can kind of understand what you're saying, and interesting that even for a home birth that you felt that, because I think in the hospital often the fathers are disregarded, not included. You know, you're not in your space. You're not considered as important. So I've had fathers, you know, they're just different people at the hospital, the way they act than they are in their own home. And like I've noticed that with children, when the mom comes to me for her appointments, the children are a lot more shy. You know, they kind of hide behind the mother, cling to the mother, play with some of my toys, but they're very reserved, I guess. You know, they get used to me a little bit more and a little bit more through each visit. But when I do a home visit, they're like a whole different child. They're playing, they're in their own environment, they're showing me things, they're talking more. And I think that children show that more, but we all feel it.
Yeah.
You know, like the mothers, the fathers, we try to pretend we're the same person, but actually how we're feeling is quite significantly different in a foreign environment that's not your space.
I mean, from my point of view, I mean, you have, all of us, we have different, you know, stories, but from my point of view, what you're saying, it resonates with me, but I wouldn't say that we pretend to be different. The fact is, it's even much, you know, much more important than that. Because if I think back to the two first births, the fact that is you are completely unaware, completely disconnected with what is happening, because you are simply, you know, you're not taken, like you say, into consideration. And I couldn't say that I've been acting differently or I've been pretending. I knew that my part was just to be there, you know, physically, but that I wasn't really important, that I wanted for myself and my wife eventually to be there as support. But for the act of birth, I was unimportant. So I didn't feel like it would make a difference being there or not. And not because I was not feeling that, but because simply my feelings were completely shut off. Because, you know, it's presented to you in a way, the birth, that you're not part of it. You're simply, you know, the father that's going to be eventually part of the education of your kids. But into the birth, you're just a, you know, a third party that you can be there if you want and enjoy and watch, but you are not important. So, so it simply cut it off completely. It's part of feelings that a man can have.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really important differences for a home birth.
Yeah,
is the father's role in participating much more actively in the birth of his child. He's engaged and feeling like his role is much more significant or important. Where in the hospital, it's kind of assumed by everyone that it's just the mother birthing the baby. So that's another, and you know, even for you, feeling so engaged as Katya's partner, the father of this baby, you know, that that even the arrival of the midwives changed that a little bit for you at the beginning until you talked to yourself and got into the new, dynamic of having them there.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of my experiences that really, really helped me understand the difference of how it is for the midwife and the woman, the whole family at home. I had a woman who had, I can't remember if I was helping her have her 6th or her 7th child, but she had a number of them. And she'd recently moved close to where I lived, and there weren't any midwives there doing home births, and she was planning a home birth looking for a midwife. She'd had several home births before. So I was keen, and I said, well, I was having some minor surgery a couple months before her due date, and I would have to get my gear, like home birth gear, and get a midwife from further away that would come as my backup. And I said I was happy to do it if everything worked out. So as it turned out, everything did work out. And so when she called me to come out for her labor, she was feeling contractions, and it was about 30 minutes to get to where she lived from where I was, 25, 30 minutes. And when I got there, she was just lying comfortably on her bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a vaginal exam, checked her, and she was fully dilated. So I was a bit surprised because she looked so calm, but yeah, she was definitely, there was a head sitting there just kind of waiting for contractions to pick up and start to push.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just watching her, and she wasn't doing much. So then she got up off the bed and walked out of the bedroom, and I was shocked inside of myself, but I was trying to, not look too shocked or surprised. I thought, where is she going? What is she doing? She's fully dilated, and she's just getting up, walking out of the room. And like, she was the experienced home birther, and I was an experienced midwife, but not experienced with home birth in a culture like New Zealand. I had attended births out of hospital in Cambodia, but that was quite a different environment and expectation and setting. So anyway, I followed her out of the room, and I thought, where is she going? What is she doing? So I just quietly followed her, and I thought, I'm a guest in her house, invited to help her if she needs help with her birth. And she walked into the kitchen, and she turned the jug or the kettle on with a flip to get some hot water for a hot drink. And then she walked to the other side of the kitchen through to the laundry room, and she took some clothes out of the washing machine and put them in the dryer. And then she went back and fixed a hot drink. And I was like, oh my goodness. I so get it. Because in the hospital, I don't think of myself as a very controlling person, but there is so much assumed control and power that I have as a midwife in the hospital setting. No woman would get up off of a delivery table in a hospital room, fully dilated, and walk out without me knowing where she was going, or even having had a discussion to, quote, give her permission to go somewhere.
Not to say about a physician, if it would be a medicalized birth, she would not have the chance to do whatever she wants.
Impossible. And yet it was just such a natural thing for her. She's in labor, but she's a mother of quite a few children, and she's thinking there's clothes in the washing machine that need drying, and while I'm waiting, I'll fix myself a cup of tea. I was
very nice story, yeah? And if you think about it, it's very powerful to think in that way, because she's in control. She's the mother having the baby, so she's supposed, all women are supposed to be, the one letting us know. I mean, us, you, midwives, and the personnel that can be around, etc., to let you what she really needs. And instead, we are completely turning upside down and controlling them, like we want to control kids in the school and everything. So it's very nice story you're telling me. Yeah.
It is so, and I just thought, well, I really am invited by her to her home. She trusts me to help her if she needs help, but I don't feel the same at all about my role. And this is better because this is for her. I realized how much at the hospital is for us and for our comfort zone, because we need to know where she is, what she's doing. I would never say, yeah, you're fully dilated, waiting for contractions to push, go do some laundry and fix a cup of tea. But when I just was quiet and, you know, respectfully watched her and followed her from a distance to see what she was doing, that's what she did. And then eventually, maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes later, it was quite a while, she started to have some contractions again, needed to push, and pushed out a baby. It was a real perspective widening experience for me as a midwife. And then I thought, wow, of course you would want to be at home. What a huge difference for you. And women say they feel stronger at home. That's why, because they're the focus of what's going on, and they're in tune with that in themselves. And I think even in a home birth, it's important for us as midwives to respect that we don't take that away from her, that we are there to support her. But often I am back in the distance, and I'm watching, but almost not directly observing. I'm kind of doing something, paperwork, especially in early labor. As the woman's labor progresses and she's getting to that really strong, and you kind of sense that she does want you in her space with her for that close connection, and to know she's not alone or whatever. I might at a certain point, I usually come over and sit closer to her. But sometimes if the father's doing that for her, they don't need me close. So I'm getting, as I get more and more matured in my midwifery practice and have more and more experience, I realize that my role is to hold the space for women to birth their babies naturally, and to let their own emotions and their own hormones be in charge. And even little things that I do can change that. So it might be a look you get from your midwife that you pick up from her look. She looks worried, or a doctor looks, you know, about something, and you feel that, and that's changed your normal birthing process. I mean, it could come from the woman herself, or it can come from what's going on around her. So I think, I'm becoming much more aware of my role to support normal, and trying to understand what normal is and how does that work the best. And lately I've been telling people, there's so many IT people who do computer stuff, and so young couples that I'm taking care of. And I told somebody the other day, they're both IT specialists, you know, expecting a baby. And I said, you know, when you buy a computer, you can buy programs to put in it to make it do things, you know, like Microsoft Word or whatever. And sometimes you buy the computer and it's already in there. You didn't even have to pay extra for it. And I said, that's like a woman. She's born programmed already to birth her baby. She didn't have to pay extra or decide to put it in there. It's just you bought the computer and it has it in there. She's born and it's in there. And so your body already has the program to birth your baby. And all the women, you know, your mother, your mother's mother, your mother's mother's mother, all those mothers that gave birth, their energy and their programming is with you for you to birth your baby. So you don't have to learn how to do it. You don't have to put the program in there. Sometimes I think you don't even need to go to antenatal classes. Like somebody recently was telling me they were at an antenatal class, and they were discussing all the complications that can happen, and, you know, what happens if you get an epidural and drips and IV lines and cesareans, and there were even pictures. And she said she didn't think she needed to know all that, because she was starting to feel quite anxious. And she'd been confident. And I said, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we were all just cats having kittens? Because the cat just goes into the dark corner in a nice safe box or whatever and has her kittens, and nobody's told her horror stories or what happens if this goes wrong or whatever. Sometimes I think, do we really need to know that? But we are such thinking beings that talk a lot and imagine things, and so we really need to focus a lot more on the normal rather than the complications, I think.
Also because,
Michelle,
I mean, it makes sense that all the complications, it's you there to take care of it eventually, if they arise. But the couple to know about all that is just instilling in the mind all this, you know, fear that something could go wrong. I mean, we all know in the back of our mind that something can go wrong any moment in any single situation, but we are not willing to go around and say, okay, now I exit the house and it might be that, you know, a drunk guy gonna drive over me. You don't want to have that kind of, you know, mindset. So you want to live your life in, you know, positively and think that everything will go right. And you can't be a specialist and expert in everything. That's why I totally agree and support. And I was happy at the end that midwives that were there, but I want them to know what to do in case of emergency. I don't want to know all what can go wrong. Just to know in advance everything that can go wrong is just putting you, you know, in a state of anxious mind that is not helping you, and it's not helping the baby, the wife, and anyone. So I understand perfectly what you say, and it's.
Yes, there has to be some kind of balance, because there is so much out there that women are trying to figure out how to negotiate through, because they just get bombarded. I remember when I was pregnant with my first baby, and we were quite friendly with another couple, my husband and I, and in the other couple, the man was a physio like me and my husband, and his wife was in medical school, and she had just had her first baby, and she offered to loan me her obstetric textbook. She said, oh, you're pregnant, you might find this interesting, here, do you want to borrow my obstetric textbook? And at the time I thought, yeah, sure, that sounds great, thank you. I took it home and I opened it, and I just randomly opened it, and I don't remember what was in there, but it was something I knew I did not want to see, not at that moment, you know. Shut the book, and I thought, I'm giving that straight back to her, because I didn't want to think, you know, your hormones are peaking and you want everything to be safe for your baby, and you don't want to think, and I was just, yeah, you don't want to think about the horrible things, even though you know that things can happen. You want to focus on the positive. And I was thinking, like, we think women need to know about all these obstetric emergencies. And I've had another woman say that in an antenatal class, they were talking about everything that can go wrong in birth, and that she and some of the other mothers were crying. They were so disturbed by what was being told. And I thought, that is not a good antenatal class to me, because I think my role for every visit or every encounter I have with the woman is to reduce her anxiety, reduce her fear, help her feel calm and confident. And that's where you're going to get, and okay, so we go out in cars. We drive, we put our kids in cars and go for rides in cars, most of us every day. There's risk involved in that. Do we go through that and consider that every day and think about, while we're driving, you know, the chance of a car crash and what could happen and what would we do? No, we need to be focusing on safe driving, but we don't think about every little detail of what if this happened and if an ambulance came and blah, blah, you know what I mean? What you expect to see, you tend to see that. You know, you find it and it reflects back to validate your belief or your opinion, or, you know, what perspective you have about some issue tends to be what the universe reflects back to you, unless you change in your own mind what you expect to happen. And there can always be exceptions, of course, and that, I guess that's why you have a midwife at a birth. It is to support normal, but recognize if this isn't normal, if the woman's not coping and it's still very long time away from a birth, or something is, then that's when it's so good to have a system like New Zealand's, where the maternity system includes home birth or primary unit births and hospital. So we have everyone in the system and booked in at the hospital if they're not planning to birth there, in case it's necessary to transfer because things are not progressing in a normal way, that transition happens seamlessly. But I think an ideal world, every woman who doesn't have significant complications before birth is allowed the opportunity, is given it has the right to support normal. And that is so much more likely, and I think sometimes even impossible, if she's not at home. If you're a relatively healthy woman and you want a normal birth, why wouldn't you? Unless the fear has taken over, then the hospital is the least likely place for you to have that.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tonga as a child. I spent 3 years, that's near Fiji and Samoa, kind of further away, but from Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific, for people who don't know Tonga. But my father was a Peace Corps doctor there, so I went there from 7 years old to 10 years old, and I did go to school there, but it was such an amazing life experience for me in my formative years to be in a culture that was so different than American or United States culture where I had come from. So then I wanted to, I knew before I had children that I wanted to offer my children a life experience similar to that, to broaden their perspective as well. So when I finished my midwifery studies in New York, Dave and I, my husband, took our 2 birth children to Cambodia. We found some service work that we could offer through an organization in Cambodia. And it was using both of our physiotherapy backgrounds, because I was a physio or a physical therapist, depending on what country you're from. And so when we went there, our children were 6 and 8, and there was no school suitable, really. And Dave had never been a real pro school person anyway. He always wanted to homeschool, which we'd kind of done before that, but anyway, that's another story. So they didn't go to school in Cambodia, but boy, did they learn a heck of a lot. So they just stayed home. They played with their neighbors. They learned Cambodian. They went to the beach with a woman we had as a nanny if we were at work. Adam, our older one, apparently was real into Pokemon cards then, and so he was like trading Pokemon cards with the monks on the beach that were there. So they learned so much, and so we spent 2.5 years with them in Cambodia. Came from Cambodia to New Zealand, so they slotted into the school here, which they wanted to go to school. They were sort of craving Western English-speaking interaction. They both were top of the class after 2.5 years of non-schooling, but learning so much. And I really think that has helped form the people that they've become. And yeah, like you said, they're not bums by any means. You know, one has become a physiotherapist, the other is a performer with a degree in acting and does a lot of writing and directing, and musician. Yeah, I mean, and then I think, okay, so birth, let's get back to birth. When the parents are respected by midwives or whoever to trust their intuition and their instincts about how best to birth their children, then that sets the scene for what kind of parents and what kind of relationship with their children they've got from the very beginning. And, you know, so much in our culture is is taking us away from trusting our instincts. And one of my favorite stories I heard from somewhere, someone, is that we're the only mammals that have convinced ourselves that our babies are better off in the hands of someone else immediately at birth. That we go into the hospital and our babies are born, they clamp and cut the cord, they take the baby over to a resuscitation table in most hospitals. They resuscitate them if needed. They check them. They put injections of vitamin K in. They put silver nitrate ointment in their eyes in the United States in case the mother has gonorrhea, which causes a bit of conjunctivitis and irritation and redness, and they're not able to see through that glucky ointment that gets put in their eyes. But we as mothers lay there on the bed and allow someone to take our baby away from us and do all of those things, and we are convinced that that's better than having the baby with us. And I think, okay, so you imagine a gorilla mother, and she just gave birth to her new baby, and somebody tries to take it away from her. What kind of reaction are you going to get? We should be the same. We should be the same. Our babies are best off with us, unless there's something terribly wrong. When I do a baby exam and this first couple of hours after a baby's born, I try hard to never interrupt what's going on with the mother and baby. And usually even weighing the baby, when the mother's ready to hand the baby to the father, I'll quickly weigh it in the process of handing the baby to the dad. But all the baby check stuff that needs to be done at birth can be done on the mother and the baby. You can look at them and you can see almost everything that ticks the boxes on a well child baby check after birth.
What you're saying is true. I mean, we are allowing, but I think that the worst part is that not the mother is allowing the baby to be taken away, has become such a standard procedure, and in the head of people has been, I don't know from where, definitely from the medicalization of birth and from the pharmaceutical industry, from whatever we have around, that is so powerful, that has been able to lead us to not think about it, or to think that that's the standard procedure and that it's right like this, like you're saying, we're the only mammals doing that. But most of the people, like we did for the first 2 births, we had, kind of thoughts here and there, but the medical system in this case, because was the doctor there telling us, no, this is not the best way, the only way. And okay, we just deleted everything else. We didn't even think anymore about it. And we just went for what is normal. But in fact, it's completely the opposite. It's not normal at all. But this power of thinking about is taken away completely. That's the scariest part.
Yeah, we're conditioned to believe that medicalized way of allowing the doctor or the midwife or whoever to be in charge of the care and do just, we are so quick to cut ourselves off from any other way of it being, I think, and one of the things that I think is really sad is that we have conditioned women to be so afraid of a normal process that we were born inherently knowing how to do. It's actually probably our highest purpose for most of us is to have children. And yet so many women of the world now believe that the best way to have their baby is to allow someone to cut them open with a knife and take out a baby. And that is safer than doing what your body was born to do and what thousands and thousands of generations of women have done for you to be here. I acknowledge that there are things that went wrong and still do go wrong, and that there are things that the medical model, the medical system can do when there's a problem, that thank goodness they can do it now, and in the past it wasn't available. But to believe that a medical intervention is better than normal under normal circumstances is a terrible thing that we've done to women. To me, it is terrible. But there are women, many, many, many women in the world who are conditioned now to believe that the safest way to have a baby is to allow a doctor to cut it out of you.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate and very sad, but it's just the beginning, because we give away, that's as you said, it's our highest purpose to have babies for women and to grow babies for humankind. That's our purpose, to perpetuate this the humankind. And we give away the power to the women to have it in a natural way, and we give away the power to the couple, to the parents, to grow their kids their natural way. Because as soon as, in many couples, what happens is that at age of 2 or 3, latest, in some cases 4 or 5 years old, they start going into kindergartens, and they are completely taken over from the power that parents would have to grow their children. And many couples, you see that in the system we have today, because they need to work both because of society and the expenses and everything, or because they feel like they want to work both, because it became a kind of treasure hunt, whatever, to collect money and to be able to buy this and that, etc. That as soon as we can, we give kids away so that we can get back to work. And you see many women doing that. And I'm not against women in career, whatever. Everyone has to find his purpose and to be allowed to be fulfilled and feel good. But when you decide to have babies, I think that's your main mission. So everything else should, take just be a part of that and be in a secondary position. And in fact, in many cases, women have already planned way ahead that they're gonna have a baby, and when the baby gonna be 1.5 or 2 years old, they're gonna put him in a nursery, and they're gonna start, with a kindergarten, and they even sign up already long in advance for these kind of things. So it's very unfortunate, but what you say, it's just the beginning of a process that then perpetuates in their entire life.
In the United States, when I was doing my training there, during pregnancy, one of the main things that women were trying to sort out was which daycare would their baby be going to, because from sometimes as early as 2 to 4 or 6 weeks was about the max, that baby was in daycare.
Wow.
That baby was in childcare, because they had no benefit to stay home, and they went back to work. And it was considered normal. When I had my babies, I was working in the United States as a physiotherapist and running 2 businesses, a rehabilitation practice and a home for elderly people. And I felt lucky to not have to go back to work until like 3.5, 4 months after my babies were born. And then I felt lucky that I had, at one point, my stepdaughter, who was 25, be able to take care of one of my babies when I went back to work, rather than her go into a daycare. That is just the norm for function in the United States. New Zealand, they hold a woman's job for a year, and I was blown away when I came to New Zealand and found out that was the case here, that women here have the option to be home and hold their job for a year.
Let me know when you're going to be available, and we are here for another 9 days in Canada, then we're going to move back to Italy.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
Visit you in Italy.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Thank you. Bye, Sharon. Bye-bye.